In a kingdom not far from here, a man named Paul found himself hopelessly lost in a dense, eerie forest. As he wandered aimlessly, trying to find his way back home, he suddenly stumbled upon an old execution ground. The setting sun cast long shadows, and the atmosphere grew increasingly unsettling. The execution ground was overgrown with weeds and moss and dilapidated, decaying gallows barely standing. The gallows reminded him of bones held together by rotted sinews. They loomed ominously in the background silently, haunting the macabre landscape. Paul looked around nervously, hoping to find a way out. As he cautiously walked through the area, he noticed 3 white skulls resting on a moss-covered rock. Intrigued and fearful, he approached the skulls. Hesitantly, he gave a light kick to one of the skulls and asked,
"Who killed you? Who killed you, skull?"
To his shock, the skull replied,
"It was the tongue."
Paul, confused, scared, and shaking with fear, stumbled back, almost tripping over his own feet.
"Great, now I'm talking to skulls,"
he muttered to himself, shaking his head.
"Next thing you know, I'll be chatting with the trees."
He ran his hands through his hair and,
"I'm losing my mind,"
he thought. Then, realizing the seriousness of the situation, he screamed and ran as fast as his legs could carry him. Terrified and doubting his sanity, Paul sprinted through the forest, darting past trees and leaping over roots, until he reached the outskirts of his village. When he arrived, his pale face and wild eyes drew the attention of the villagers.
"I found talking skulls,"
he exclaimed to everyone he met, not paying much attention to whom he was speaking. The villagers, already wary of the nearby forest, were thrown into a state of panic. Murmurs of fear and superstition spread like wildfire through the village. People locked their doors, huddled in their homes, and whispered about ghosts and curses. The news quickly reached the king, who summoned Paul to his court.
"What is this story about talking skulls?"
demanded the powerful ruler, his eyes narrowing with skepticism and irritation.
"I swear to you, my king, I heard skulls speak. I can show you."
Paul pleaded desperately. The king, intrigued but skeptical, agreed on one condition.
"If you lie and waste my time, you will pay with your life."
An expedition was swiftly assembled. The king, accompanied by his soldiers and a throng of curious onlookers, followed Paul back through the forest to the execution ground. There, Paul pointed to the skulls and nervously asked,
"Who killed you? Who killed you, skull?"
He waited, but there was only silence. Desperate, he asked again.
"Who killed you, skull?"
Still, there was no response. Paul repeated his question, his voice growing more frantic each time, but the skulls remained silent. The king, his patience wearing thin and his anger boiling over, shouted,
"Execute this liar immediately. He caused panic in my village and wasted my time."
Paul was swiftly executed, his body collapsing beside the rock. As the crowd began to leave the execution ground, a faint, eerie laugh echoed through the air. One of the skulls turned towards the fallen Paul and whispered loudly enough for everyone to hear,
Didn't I tell you that it was the tongue that killed me?"
The villagers and the king were stunned, realizing Paul had told the truth, but it was too late to save him. The power of words is immense. Proverbs 18:21 says, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits." Be mindful of what you say, for careless speech can lead to irreversible consequences, often realized too late.